My name's Judy Dale, and I'm a survivor of mental and physical abuse. I was brought up in Sydney, New South Wales when I was 11 years old, and then we moved to the Gold Coast in Queensland. I was very young and naive, coming from New South Wales and Sydney, going to Queensland. The class that I was put in for school, they were actually 2 years ahead of me, so it was very, very hard. I was still the pony mad girl. They were already into boys and having sex, and they were like only 13-year-olds. So anyway, it was a very big jump, being from a wealthy family, being protected all the time, not knowing anything about men or boys or sex, just completely pony mad, and as actually riding for Australia in show jumping. When I was about 15, it was 2 weeks off my 16th birthday, where we had the horses adjusted, which for Americans might be where you kept your horses. There was a shed there that they rented out for men to make surfboards, as we were only like 2 minutes from the beach. And there was always probably about 20 men there. It was quite a big factory. Anyway, of course, being a little kid, I was only like 15 then and used to say hello and walk past. And, we had by then being 15, I had the Gold Coast look down perfect, which would be probably like the Californian look. So brown skin, the long blonde hair, really skinny. It worked very much against me. We went to this community fair at Currumbin on the Gold Coast, and all the locals were there. It was kids, it was a band, everything like that. I went with a group of girls, and they were 15, 16. I was probably 16, 17 actually. There was these two men there. One was 27 and one was 45. They knew me. I knew them as Judy and H and P. And I'm not ever sure what happened, whether it was or drinking, because I didn't drink and I didn't take. But my next memory of that is being inside H's house, being on the bed, not knowing what's going on, not knowing a thing. So I would say maybe or something like that, something that makes you completely numb. I can remember him taking my clothes off, the 27-year-old, and actually having sex with me, and then saying to me, I remember still just laying bolt still like that, thinking, not really working out what sex is, and laying really, really still, and him saying, I can't be bothered with virgins. And he actually got me out of bed, and I still can't quite remember it, so I would be saying they gave me something. But I wasn't hallucinating. I was just slow and couldn't talk. Anyway, he led me into this other man's bedroom that was 45 years old. W actually held me down like he'd raped me, and raped me hard, with bruises, bleeding, everything like that. I don't even know how I got through it. I mentally blocked it. I went home to Mum, of course, the next day. She thought I stayed at one of the girlfriend's places, but I didn't. That was my introduction to sex and men. So I couldn't tell my mum, because I grew up in a severe Catholic family where you don't talk about divorce. You don't talk about rape. If anyone belted you, you don't talk about it. It's all covered up. Anyway, so I never told Mum, but this is what I don't understand as I've got later and recognised. Mum would have had to wash my clothing, which had blood and semen on it. I started working at the casino on the Gold Coast. It was the first, I think the second one in Australia, and it was huge, 2,000 employees. It's like I must have on my head loser tattooed, because every single bloody married man at this casino tried to get onto me. And I was a little bit cute, I'll give it that. I was a little bit cute at 17. And I met this man. He was 15 years older than me, and he played me like a toy. And I initially liked him very much. It was a terrible, terrible 7 years with him. After a little while, it was, when I look back now, like Stockholm syndrome. That's what it was. I loved him, hated him, loved him, hated him. He got very, very possessive, and I mean possessive as in really psycho thoughts. And also I found out he actually had a partner who had 4 children with him while he was with me. And he kept referring to her as the brood mare, as in horses, and I was the young filly. With him, we went through the terrible broken arms, fractured pelvis, teeth knocked out, cheekbone broken, my head smashed through the glass of a car window. This went on for nearly 7 years till he lost interest in me. My family didn't know why I was with him, and no one did, but no one asked, and they would see stitches in my face, arms in casts, fingers bandaged, stitches in my chest, and he also slashed me with razor blades over the stomach, and they were stitched. What I got out of this, being older, is he threatened my mum and dad. He said if I wasn't with him, he would hurt them or slit Dad's throat. I did go to the police once when he pushed my head through the window because I had glass in my eye, and it was nearly a week in hospital and surgery for my eyes. Anyway, I went to the police, made the complaint for 7 years of being bashed up and everything, but this one, someone saw. So they actually had a witness to say it was him. Before he worked at the hotel, he was a mechanic in a garage. The garage fixed all the police cars, so he knew them. Before I had my interview with the detective knew him quite well. Now they went to charge him, but the charges were dropped. So that was a big tick for me against the police. I went to them very vulnerable with the doctor's report, with the hospital report, with a witness, and it evaporated. I don't know how psycho men can be, but he always thought of us as Bonnie and Clyde. He would love to kill a person and see if he could get away with it. He would love to torture a person, seeing if he got to get away with it. Well, he already got away with it for me. One day we were going down to Byron Bay, and it was about a 2-hour drive, and it's always talking about picking up a hitchhiker and killing them. And I thought, just being young in my mind, my thing was survival. Just go along and say to you and keep it going, keep it trying to be nice. Don't look at anyone. Anyway, we were coming back from Byron Bay, and he stopped and picked a young boy up that was hitchhiking. I was terrified for this boy. I was sitting in the front in the passenger seat. I could see him in the mirror in the back seat, and G went really, really quiet. At this stage, I'd actually opened up the boot during the day and saw a shovel, a bag of lime, and a chainsaw, and I think knives and garbage bags. And I just shut the door and thought, whatever, as long as that's got nothing to do with me. He pulled over, he said to this boy he'd drive him home. He pulled over into the bush with him. And I was looking at this child through the mirror, thinking, please get out. And his eyes met mine. G had undone his seatbelt, and I really think he was going to turn around and punch him in the face and knock him out. And he had made one remark. He said, hey Jude, this will be our Bonnie and Clyde moment. That kid, who was exceptionally smart, because he saw the tears in my eyes and me saying, get out, got out and ran. He dropped his school bag and he ran. And I honestly think it probably saved his life. I do think he was going to kill him. But there was one day where we were sitting on the high rise, we're on the 9th balcony, and he had just absolutely torn into me, and I was sitting in a chair shaking. He came out and he sat next to me, and this is how he knew me so well in the head. He said, you would like to kill me now and get home, wouldn't you? You'd like to go home to your mum and dad. And I was, yeah, I would. I want to go home. He said, you wait one step. You stand up or do anything. And he said, I will throw you over that balcony. And he said, it's not very hard, because he said, you wobble. He said, I can say you easily just fell over. He was actually jittering like this and standing there and hovering over me, and I went just dead inside, and every survival instinct said, shut up, and just shut up and sit there. I made 1 inch of a move, he weighed 1 inch towards me. I sat on that balcony for nearly 2 bloody hours before he went to work. He went to work and I could get up. When I got older, I got to about 23, I started getting a bit of backbone, getting a bit of, no, you can't do that, telling my mum about him. This is going to sound sickening too. With this person, he didn't want me on birth control. He didn't like that, and he didn't use a condom. I fell pregnant on numerous occasions, and being Catholic, I couldn't tell my mum. I couldn't tell anyone, and he would say, I want a young filly, not a brood mare. I've already got a brood mare with 4 kids. After each abortion, and this is what I'm terribly embarrassed about, because I'm very Catholic, you do not kill. I don't even remember how many abortions I had. He took me to the clinic. He would drop me off and pick me up. And this is the saddest in him. He would want to have sex with me straight away out of coming out of theatre and getting picked up. I didn't know how to get out of it at the time. I just didn't know. And 3 times I had cancer, where you have cancer in your uterus and you have it lasered or stitched out. The 3 times I had it, 2 were stitches, 1 was staples. He got me home and had sex with me because he wanted to feel the stitches. That's probably the lowest I've ever felt in my life. In this short story of my life, I should have asked for help. I should have, not police, I don't believe I should have gone to the police or mum and dad, but I should have asked somewhere. But there was nowhere for help. Even where I worked, I would lose numerous jobs because I'd come in with black eyes and stitches, and I normally worked on front office reception, and they don't want that. That's not the face of the company, someone standing there with black eyes. So towards the end, I did meet a woman who was about 44. She helped me get away from him. She was an ex-police woman, and she actually intimidated him. She told him to stay away, that she knew everything he had done, and she was a backup. She said, we can't do anything because, as in, this is between me and her, let's bluff him about charging him and everything. She knew who the detectives were that he knew that wouldn't charge him. She said, they're not going to deal with you because he's been a friend of them for 17 years. Big lesson from that is talk to someone. And I should have never fallen that he was going to hurt my mum and dad, because he wasn't. It was just, that was the leverage over me. And I also had a cat and a dog, and he brought that in, that he would nail the cat to the door if I didn't keep seeing him. So I didn't go near men or boys or whatever you want to call it I was about 25, 26. I'd had about 18 months, I think. I just couldn't even look at a male, I stopped my job at the casino. I wanted to get my racehorse licence because I loved horses. I was on the Gold Coast still, and Gold Coast Racecourse, and I had to spend 2 years with a trainer to get your experience, to get your racehorse trainer's licence. So I done the 2 years. In that time, I met a jockey. This is another thing I think, loser tattooed across my head, and all these married men coming on to me at the race course. And I'd open up they're all married. And this is where, I don't know if it was the industry, but jockeys used to say to me that they all played up on their wives, the whole lot did. So I met Mr. K. Now, he was married and he had 2 children. He had a for-sign sale outside his house. I met his children at night time because his wife was at work, and he said they were divorcing. So I thought, okay, I've met his children. I've said hello to his wife. She had the same name as me. And houses for sale, so this must be genuine. It wasn't genuine. And they were apparently selling the house to have another child and have a bigger family. This jockey obsession started with him, and I mean bad obsession. He would, I don't know how he did it, he would get into my house in the middle of the night and get into my bed. I could be eating dinner and he's walking down the hallway. He knew how to break and enter a house with not one shred of noise. Cut a long story short, this happened over about 18 months where we did go out a little bit, but I was still very wary the house hadn't sold. His wife gave me really dirty looks when I came over there, and I thought, what is happening here? But we would go to race days where he was riding, and he would hold my hand in the car, and his 2 children were in the back, and they were only tiny little children. So they saw that. I thought, okay, this must be true. It's just taking a little bit between them. Anyway, obsession came to fatal attraction. I didn't want to see him anymore because his stories weren't adding up. The more I didn't take his phone calls or answer the door, the more mental he got. I came to the door one day and I was living with an older woman near the track, so I didn't have to travel so far. I opened the door, and at this stage I wasn't really scared for my life. No one had threatened me, and he's standing there with 2 men about probably 6'2", because he's a jock. My mind was to flee. I turned around and ran to my bedroom. I didn't even get to my bedroom, and these 2 men grabbed me. I was dragged to a vehicle. So the 3 of them were there. Mr. K got me in the back of the car and held my head head down. And this is, I think, where women have to be so vigilant, because the police asked me, what were the seat belts like? What was the material on the back seat like? What was the carpet like on the floor? What could you see? My head was like that into the seat. I could smell the smell. I could see the colour of everything, but I could hardly breathe, and I did get unconscious a few times. Anyway, the time he drove me, or the other man drove to where we got, it had Beaudesert Racecourse, so I knew where we were. I didn't know anything about the racecourse, and he had split from his wife and he was living in a house on the racecourse. So when I saw Beaudesert Racecourse from down, I thought, okay, we're at Beaudesert Racecourse. But I had never been in the house. They dragged me to the house. They kept it in darkness. And this was their downfall. They kept it in darkness. The two men waited outside. Mr. K was inside with me. He raped me. He got a knife out and cut between my legs. He got matches out and lighters, and they burnt my genital. They burnt between the top of my legs. They burnt under my breasts, and completely punching me in the breasts and stomach. I felt one of my ribs break with one of the punching, because I could hardly breathe, and I was bleeding and a mess. They didn't touch my face or anything like that. When my head was backwards, I was able to decipher lights in the corner that were red, blue and green coming from maybe a stereo or a TV. My head went back again and I could see like a kitchen to the right, and I could hear a dog whining behind a door, and I could feel the fabric of the couch was leather. I'm lying there absolutely bawling in pain from the burns all over my body, and they're talking about how to get rid of my body, that another jockey had offered them their boat. They were going to chop my body up, put it in bags and dump it out at sea. And they knew how far to go out, that the sharks would take my body, and that no one would ever know what happened to me. It did affect me quite a lot, because they just spoke about it. They were doing it. There was no, we've got to do this, we've got to hide the body because she'll testify against us. I don't actually know what happened after that. I was knocked out again, and the burning continued between my legs, but more on my vagina now, with lighters and burnt torches and things like that. I got to the point, and I think women probably get to the point where you're so shocked, you don't know where you are, you don't know what's happening, the pain is in your body. I think survival kicks in, that you say or do anything to just please them. The two men went out the door, and he came back in and he said, well, we should have you dead and wrapped up within 4 hours, and you won't be here. And he said, I can go back to my wife. No one will ever know what happened to you. I was begging for my life. I was begging. And I said, I will not go to the police. I won't go anywhere, but you need to get me to a hospital. And he said, no. Anyway, a couple of hours still went on. I was raped again. I think with my face, I had 2 more teeth knocked out, and my right eye couldn't open. It was totally swollen and bruised, but I also had cuts right along here. I've got all stitches, cuts up here. I would say by now it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know what happened, because I was praying to God like anything to get me out of here. Just get me out. I want to live. The 2 men went. Mr. K dragged me up off the lounge, tried to put my clothes back on, which didn't work. They were all bloody and torn, but put my underpants back on. Took me out the door, and I'm stumbling. I don't know what I'm doing like this. My legs could hardly walk. I could hardly breathe with my rib. And lo and behold, my car is there. One of them had driven the car from my place to their place. He pushed me in the car and he said, go. He said, you got 20 minutes, go. Or he said, you will be dead. And he said, see those lights over there, which I could in a distance, about 4 k's. He said, that is them, go. I went, but I crashed into about 4 things before I could work out how I was in the car. A 1-hour trip or a 1.5-hour trip home took me nearly 5 hours. I kept pulling over, no mobile phones at this point type of thing. Pulled over, I was sick, I was bleeding all over the car. I could hardly, I could have killed someone. I could hardly drive, and this was through a mountain range down back onto the Gold Coast. I got to my house. I don't remember anything to the next morning. The lady that I lived with had found me in the garage on the floor. She actually got me into the house. She knew who this gentleman was and she knew how dangerous he was. She was very good friends with the judge. She rang the judge. He was in Sydney and said about how do we go about this the right way. For her going to the police, he's married. He's with his wife. She explained the whole thing, which was really, really good to this guy. And he organised detectives and everything like that. I did not get to the hospital because this was about 4 in. Got to the police station at 6. She had me wrapped in a blanket and took me in. I had described everything, every little thing, but I did not tell them about the rape because they were basically sitting there going, sure. I opened the blanket. I had no clothes on. I couldn't put clothes on. My body was just a mass of blood and black bruises and the burns were oozing. Anyway, they took my statement. I went to the hospital. I was in hospital for nearly a week and a half. I had dental work done. My jaw had actually been dislocated. And it was hard to tell these coppers because I couldn't open my mouth and I couldn't work what was wrong. So my jaw was actually still pinned. And I was in hospital for a little bit and I could only drink through a straw. The burns on my body, they were talking about maybe skin grafts, but where the area was, I didn't want anyone near me. I didn't want doctors looking at me with my legs open. So they treated me as a burns victim and it took a long time. But they healed, but they're still all there. I think there's 220 burns on my body. What happened is the police picked him up and this guy wasn't too smart. He admitted what he'd done in 30 minutes. They brought him out 30 lies in 30 minutes and charged him straight away. Never found who the other two were. They didn't find them and Mr. K didn't let on. So between my testimony of the dog looking out the lights, the window, the light coming through the window and seeing the kitchen, it helped my case because they said, how did you know where you were with the lights off? And I said, Beauty Desert Racecourse, and I described the house where I saw while lying on the back like this. So after charging him, they did go out and they said, there's a heaps of girls come to us about rapes and abductions, but you described everything. You described the fabric, the cars. They found the car. You described the smell of the vinyl, everything. He said you had a slam dunk case. We went to court. He was convicted and charged and found guilty within 40 minutes. The jury unanimous. I had gone in there and I was shaking, scared of him. He was behind glass and he was still intimidating me. This is in front of a judge and a jury. So the magistrate actually said, just turn your chair, look at the jury, look at the police, don't look at him. And I told my story and I was out of there in about 10 minutes and then came back about 30, 40 minutes later, charged and convicted. But get this, 2 years jail, 2 years for abduction, assault, rape and torture. He got out in 6 months on a good behaviour bond. I had got my racehorse licence. The whole racing community was behind him because he'd been there his whole life. They'd known him from a 15-year-old kid. The day of his departure from the prison, he turned up at the racetrack. He turned up like nothing happened. There was no order to keep away from me. There was nothing. And the actual detectives that done the case didn't even know he was released. I didn't even get a warning. He came up to me and he said, I don't care how long this takes. I will get you. I will kill you. It could be 20 years from now, but you destroyed my life. My wife won't come back to me. My children hate me. He said, you'll never be prepared. He said, and it won't matter where you are. The racing and that, he got back his jockey's trainer's licence, where you're not allowed to have a conviction. Got his licence back just like that. I was spat at on the race course when I was, doing my training and that. Called a slut. Called a home wrecker. And mainly the spitting, I don't know, the slut. I couldn't find anyone to work for me because they were all friends of his. I did the horses very early in the morning. I worked for a bank, did the horses in the afternoon and worked for a restaurant. Now, you know what was said about me? That I was a prostitute and that was the only way that I could afford my horses. Wasn't that, I worked hard. And every day, as I said, I was spat at. I was called a slut, a whore, everything you could come across. And you know what? I handled it. I had my back up and I thought, he done wrong, not me. And I trained for about 3 or 4 years and it did wear me down in the end. It was hard to find jockeys for the horses because they took his side on everything. I did right. I went to the police, I got him. What he did to me, I can't go to the front door at the moment. And I'm 55 now. This happened when I was 28. I actually got married and I should never have got married. That was probably the saddest day of my life because I knew I married the wrong person. He was an ex-jockey and he turned out to be a criminal and also fraudulent with money. He died at the age 44 from a heart attack, and at the funeral people were wondering where their 1.2 million went, and I couldn't even cook dinner. I had no money to even cook dinner. The funeral was on for him. The police and the solicitors came around for him and went through the whole place, and they could not know what he'd done with 1.2 million. Now, that marriage, and this is what I didn't understand between mental and physical, abuse. I would have said my whole life was physical abuse. A couple of years ago, I saw a mental health nurse and started seeing a psychiatrist because it was so bad. If someone comes knocking on the door, and to this day I do it, I hide in the closet. I go straight into the closet and hide. But it's something that my GP said is probably never going to go. He said you probably always will have that. Even seeing the psychiatrists and that, nothing is really helping. It's been time. It's just time and time and time. But every day I think of it, for people with post-traumatic stress syndrome. I didn't even know I had it till 2 years ago. And one of the mental nurses, I told her what I've told you, and this really got me. She said, you've got a guardian angel guarding you. You should have been dead twice. And that was the highlight, I think, of the last couple of years, that she just looked at me and she was crying. But you're here. She said, you've got a great story. 2016, 2 men and a woman burgled me, came into my place. Anyway, I saw them circling the house and we're on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I locked all the doors. I hid in the closet, which was, I don't know what I was going to do in the closet. Anyway, I was peeping out and they went through the house and they were looking for something. They came into the bedroom and opened the wardrobe door, and here am I in my nightie and my bed gown, hiding in the closet. The man grabbed me by my head and pulled me out to the kitchen and said, where's the money? Oh, what money? What are you talking about? These dickheads had the wrong house. But for 2 hours, I was held hostage. You may see here, all my teeth have been knocked out. It requires quite a lot of surgery to get my mouth fixed and implants done. Can't afford it. The police victims will fix your teeth, but they will not do implants because it's like $50,000. So I'm out with my mouth. These idiots thought I had, I think they were after $10,000. So they had the wrong place. They got charged. The police ended up coming. I did it. I said, can I use the phone and I'll get you your money? Oh, okay. I grabbed the phone and I said, I just need to walk away a little bit. And I rang someone I know and I was saying, call the police. Oh, yes. Can I borrow money off you? Call the police. Anyway, this guy, thank God, because he was an old farmer, he got the message and called the police. The police arrived at the door. These idiots standing out there, yeah, we broke into her house, yeah, we threatened her. She owes $10,000 in money. The twats, the wrong house, the wrong property. They didn't charge the girl though. They charged the 2 boys, and they did not charge them with assault, even though all my teeth had got knocked out. I think God has put me here for a reason, and it's to tell my story to people and to help them.